Awesome. And I'd like to welcome everybody here today to another Lunch and Learn webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about end-to-end business process testing, or what we call component testing here on Qyrus. So essentially taking these end-to-end business process tests and actually building them out in real scripts. And you'll learn a little bit more about how that looks on Qyrus and how that works in this Lunch and Learn today. So thank you guys for joining. Hope you guys enjoy.
Qyrus is your one-stop shop for all your testing needs. We are the first comprehensive and complete automated testing SaaS platform that can test all things digital. Test your web applications, mobile applications, perform API testing, and tie it all together by testing end-to-end business processes on Qyrus too. But beyond just that, Qyrus covers your infrastructure needs as well. Through the usage of our own device and browser farms, execute your tests at lightning speeds, in parallel, and on real mobile devices. To complete the circle, tie in your CI/CD pipeline implementations. Qyrus is simple to use, scalable to your testing needs, implements smart features to augment the testing process, and entirely secure.
Component testing on Qyrus can also be stated as end-to-end business process testing. In this service, testers can connect and chain together test scripts in a way that can test complete business processes. Web, mobile, API, and desktop test scripts can be created or imported and linked together, allowing for the interchange of data and more complex business process test scenarios to take place. Let's make an example out of a common retail process that we all might be familiar with, especially after COVID-19. As COVID-19 hit and the world shut down, everyone began to realize the rapid digital shift that started in the years before, and it's now rapidly taking shape and root in our society as a whole. Many companies who were ahead of the digital curve found themselves in a happy spot, not taken aback by the shift to the digital. Some others, however, found that they were way behind in this game. One such digitized process that we all know of is curbside pickup. Today, we all have the ability to log on to our favorite retail or grocery store's application on our computers or phones, add our items, and drive to the store to be met curbside by an employee with all of our purchased goods. In this process, we might be testing not only a web application, but also mobile applications as well as APIs. This process is testable on Qyrus with component testing. Components are individual scripts that we can piece and wire together to create scripts that would test the end-to-end business process. Components can either come from the web, mobile, API, or desktop testing service. When wired together, they make a complete test. Components can be imported from our other testing services. With that being said, they enter into. One core tenet of Qyrus is reusability. By making tests more reusable, testers can save enormous amounts of time and prevent redundant and unnecessary tasks. Once these scripts are in component, testers can modify or change the scripts as they see fit. Otherwise, if the imported scripts are all you need, we can move straight into the test building process. To build a component test on Qyrus, all a user has to do is add the components that they want to include in the test, and then add the connections from one component to the next. If there are some data handling and verifications that want to be done in the component script, users can use action types such as create variable and dynamic verify to verify values and conditions across the different components. As an example, we have this simple script we made here to illustrate dynamic data handling. Here, we navigate to a web page and create a new variable based off the data we capture from an element on that page, which can be dynamic or changing. Let's imagine we are capturing some user or product ID. We can then set up steps that will perform dynamic actions and set some field to that value saved, as well as the verifications against that value. Subsequently, in another component, we can also do this data handling and verification. This can be akin to grabbing some identification number from one component and searching for that ID in the next, like searching for some specific user or product using the ID. We can also do something like verifying that the ID is correct on the user or product. Select which test to execute and then click the Execute button at the top right of the page. This will bring up a pop-up. For web, we have ability to execute on different web browsers and OS combinations. Here we are executing on Windows 10 by default and on a Chrome browser version 1.13. For mobility, we have the ability to execute on different mobile devices. You might have heard this before, but I think it's important to reiterate that all devices on Qyrus are real devices that are located in one of our 3 device farms in the US, UK, and India. We can choose to execute on a singular device or set up a device pool to execute this test on. Some extra execution options exist, most notably the ability to email users after test completion and the ability to schedule this test execution for a specific time for repeated executions, hourly, daily, or weekly. In the report for component tests, at the very top we get some metadata like how many tests were executed in terms of pass versus fail, and also the execution time and the infrastructure we used. Below we get step-by-step analysis with pass and fail indicators, as well as screenshots. When it comes to data verification, we can see that plainly the expected and actual data results captured by Qyrus. For example, in this scenario, we subtracted $20 from an account on our web application, and when logging into the mobile application, we are checking that only $20 should have been subtracted. We can see not only in the screenshot, but also in the Qyrus report that the transaction only subtracted $20. Users also have the ability to share the report with their colleagues, whether it be via email or downloading it locally. Lastly, every execution not only has screenshots, but also video evidence, which can also be downloaded. Here in the video, we can clearly see the uninterrupted transition from our web component into our mobile component. And that concludes this part of our Lunch and Learn series. We thank you so much for joining us today and hope that you gained some insightful information on how Qyrus works and how we perform automation testing. Thanks much. Awesome. Hello, guys. Hope you found that informational and helpful in learning more about Qyrus and what we do and how we do end-to-end business process testing. So we did have a couple of questions that we wanted to answer. That came in a little bit earlier, a couple of minutes ago. So one question is, are we able to implement desktop-based test scripts into these component scripts? And the answer to that is yes, we are. We're actually able to take desktop scripts and implement it right alongside any of those other scripts, as you saw just previously in this presentation. So we can put it in front of a web script or be in front of a mobile script or API calls. And in any order or number in between, we can do that. So we can also implement desktop testing into this end-to-end business process testing. Next, is the video recording of the execution enabled by default, or is that some extra thing that we have to get? That's a great question. So by default, you get the video executions and recordings of the executions. That's by default for every Qyrus test for both web, mobile, and this component testing. So we're actually able to, by default, have all of that loaded and saved for us to view, for the testers to view and the users. So yeah, there's no extra add-on or whatever it might be that you have to acquire for that. That's by default. Just like the screenshots are all by default as well. And you have all of those automatically enabled too. And then lastly, last question we have here, what happens when we have already existing scripts in other services that we want to use in component testing? That's a great question as well. Qyrus thinks ahead on those kinds of scenarios. What I like to say here at Qyrus is that we have a high degree of reusability and a low degree of maintenance. We believe in reusability and that, redundant work should be minimized at best. Instead of having the user recreate all the test scripts that they want to use in this end-to-end business process test that they're building, they can actually just import directly from our other services. So it just makes it a lot more simpler in that manner. So a lot quicker to get onboarded as well in terms of getting those component tests running. It's really easy to build out each one of these individual tests for web, mobile, API. And then when we're ready, we just kind of import them all over to the component service and then stitch them all together and then build out those tests. So it's a lot quicker in that regard too. But yep, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for joining us today. Join us next in November. November should be our next Lunch and Learn, where we're going to be talking a little bit about test data management and what that means on Qyrus. We have test data management built into Qyrus, and we're excited to teach you guys a little bit more about that. So thank you very much for joining us today, or have a good Thursday. Happy day.